Okay. Okay. Well, it seems to be working this time. I don't know. Like, I have no confirmation if the sound is working or not. So let's hope it works. I'm losing like 20 minutes of me reading or whatever. Hi, I'm Olivier Bouchard. I'm a game developer, and sometimes I stream, sometimes I do shit and I wanted to stream. Like, I had this really stupid idea for a while. So this is gonna be a mess. But first up, my channel is bilingual, let's say. So normally it's in French, but for now it's gonna be in English, and I might switch from time to time. I'm sorry if you're not. And like, my French is better than my English, so whatever. But I wanted to do this one in English because the idea I had was to do a let's read, like a let's play, but for a book, which might be the least interesting ever made. But I kind of had this idea, and I looked up online, and I thought people would already do this, but it seems nobody did it except like hackers or audiobook. But I want to do a let's read, which is like a nobody, which is me, reading a book and not acting the same way you would see someone play a video game. So I'm not a good reader. I'm not going to do voice. I wanted to read To the Lighthouse, Virginia Woolf, because it's probably one of my favorite books, and it's been a while since I've read it, so why not? And the reason I wanted to do this is just because I'm just going to read a chapter today. Well, the book is in 3 chapters, but like every chapter has a ton of parts. I'm going to read one part today, which is about 10 pages, but like we'll see from day to day how many pages I read or how long I read. I'm going to do a long read because I feel like talking like this. It's going to be hard after a while. And it's probably going to be boring, and there's probably no audience but my friend for it. But why would we care, huh? We're here for the show. Do I have anything else to say? No, the only last thing I would want to say is that I wanted to do this because I kind of like sharing culture with the internet. I like sharing the stuff I like, the heart I love with the internet and with everybody, even though like nobody's gonna watch this. And I might had at the end of my video, I might had recommendation to stuff I like that is on YouTube. It might be like music or video games or movies or shit, because I just want to share that stuff with people, and I never know where, and I can send a link into the void this way. So there's that. And last thing is, my room is a little tilted, so that's why the poster behind is like not okay, but like I assure you, I also tilted the webcam a little to give it back some tilt, but it didn't work that well. Is there somebody watching me, or am I literally alone? Okay, whatever. I need to be alone because it's going to record the video, and then I'll decide if I post this or not. I don't plan on doing this weekly. I just plan to doing when I want. I said I was going to stream other video game, but I tried to do video, but they were kind of shit, so I didn't post them. For now, this is going to be this, but I might stream more. We'll see. So, To the Lighthouse, Chapter 1. Yes, of course, it's fine tomorrow, said Mrs. Ramsay, but you'll have to be up with the lark, she added. To her son, these words conveyed an extraordinary joy, as if it were settled the expedition were bound to take place. There's a note after expedition, but I'm not going to read those. It's going to be a mess if I do. But I might have some of my Oh, it's like I'm doing right now. So, if it were so well, the expedition were bound to take place, and the wonder to which he had looked forward for years and years, it seemed, was after a night's darkness and a day's sail within touch. Since he belonged, even at the age of 6, to that great clan which cannot keep this feeling separate from that, but must let future prospect with their joys and sorrows cloud what is actuality at hand, since to such people, even in earliest childhood, any turn in the wheel of sensation has the power to crystallize and transfix the moment upon which its glooms or radiance rest. James Ramsay, sitting on the floor, cutting out pictures from the illustrated catalog of the Army and Navy stores, and though the picture of a refrigerator as his mother spoke with heavenly bliss. It was fringed with joy. The wheelbarrow, the lawnmower, the sound of poplar trees. Sorry, I'm getting notification and it's bothering me. I'm gonna need to think about stuff to stop doing that. Leaves widening before rain, brooks calling, brooms knocking, dress rustling. All these were so colored and distinguished in his mind that he had already his private code, his secret language, though he appeared the image of stars and uncompromising severity, with his high forehead and his fierce blue eyes, impeccably candid and pure, frowning slightly at the sight of human frailty, so that his mother, watching him guide his scissor neatly round the refrigerator, imagine him all red and Hermione on the bench, or directing a stern and momentous enterprise in some crisis of public affair. I think I'll stop right here. Just to say, again, not a great reader. This is gonna help me practice my English. I'm sorry if I'm messing up too often, but it's gonna be like this. So I'm continuing now. But, said his father, stopping in front of the drawing room window, it won't be fine. Had there been an axe handy, a poker, or any weapon that would have gashed a hole in his father's breast and killed him, there and then, James would have seized it. Such were the extremes of emotion that Mr. Ramsay excited in his children's breast by his mere presence standing, as now, lean as a knife, narrow as the blade of one, grinning sarcastically, not only with the pleasure of disillusioning his son and casting ridicule upon his wife, was 10,000 times better in every way than he was, James thought, but also with some secret conceit at his own accuracy of judgment. What he said was true. It was always true. He was incapable of untruth, never tempered with a fact, never uttered a disagreeable word to suit the pleasure or convenience of an immortal being, least of all his own children, who, sprung from his loin, should be aware from childhood that life is difficult, facts uncompromising, and the passage to the fallible land where her brightest hopes are extinguished, or frail barks founder in darkness. Here Mr. Ramsay would straighten his back and narrow his little blue eyes upon the horizon, one that needs, above all, courage and truth and the power to endure. But it may be fine, I expect. I expect it will be fine, said Mrs. Ramsay, making some little twist of the reddish-brown stocking she was knitting impatiently. If she finished it tonight, if they did go to the lighthouse after all, it was to be given to the lighthouse keeper, for his little boy was threatened with a tuberculous hip, together with a pile of a whole magazine and some tobacco. Indeed, whatever she could find lying about, not really wanted, but only littering the room to give those poor fellows who must be bored to death sitting all day with nothing to do but polish the lamp and trim the wick and rake about on their scrap of garden, something to amuse them. For how would you like to be shut up for a whole month at a time, and possibly in stormy weather, upon a rock the size of a tennis lawn, she would ask, and to have no letters or newspaper, and to see nobody, if you were married, not to see your wife, not to know how your children were, if they were ill, if they had fallen down and broken their legs or arms, to see the century wave breaking week after week, and then a dreadful storm coming, and the windows covered with spray, and birds dashed against lamp, and the whole place rocking, and the devil to put your nose out of the door for fear of being swept into the sea. Oh, would you like that, she asked, addressing herself particularly to her daughters. So she added, rather differently, one must take then whatever comforts one can. It's due west, said the atheist tensely, holding his bony fingers spread so that the wind blew through them, for he was sharing Mr. Ramsay's evening walk up and down the terrace. That is to say, the wind blew from the worst possible direction for landing at the lighthouse. Yes, he did say disagreeable things, Mrs. Ramsay admitted. It was odious of him to rub this in and make James still more disappointed, but at the same time, she would not let them laugh at him. The atheist, they called him, the little atheist. Rose mocked him, Prue mocked him, Andrew, Jasper, Roger mocked him. Even old Badger, without a tooth in his head, had bit him. Okay. For being, as Nancy put it, the unrelenting young man to chase them all the way up to the Hebrides, when it was ever so much nicer to be alone. So as far as I understand, the kid wants to go to the park, and the parents are like, no, it's going to be rainy. Okay, sorry. Nonsense, said Mrs. Ramsay with great severity. Apart from the habit of exaggeration which they had from her, and from the implication, which was true, that she asked too many people to stay and had to lodge some in the town, she could not bear incivility to her guests, two young men in particular who were poor as church mice, exceptionally able, her husband said, is great admirers, and come there for a holiday. Indeed, she had the whole of the other sex under her protection. For reasons she could not explain, for their chivalry and valor, for the fact that they negotiated treaties, ruled India, controlled finance, finally for an attitude toward herself which no woman could fail to feel or to find agreeable, something trustful, childlike, reverential, which an old woman could take from a young man without less dignity, and woe betide the girl. Pray heaven when it was none of her daughters, who did not feel the worth of it, and all that it implied to the marrow of her bones. She turned with severity upon Nancy. He had not chased them, she said. He had been asked. They must find a way out of it all. There might be some simpler way, some less laborious way, she sighed. When she looked in the glass and saw her hair gray, her cheeks sunk. At 50, she thought possibly she might have managed things better. Her husband, money, his books, but for her own part, she would never, for a single second, regret her decisions, evade difficulty, or slur over duties. She was now formidable to behold, and it was only in silence, looking up from their plates, after she had spoken so severely about Charles Tansley, that their daughters, Prue, Nancy, Rose, could sport with infidel ladies which they had brewed from themselves of a life different from hers. In Paris, perhaps, a wilder life, not always taking care of some man or other, for there was in all their minds a mute questioning of difference and chivalry, of the blank of England in the Indian Empire, of ring finger and lace, though to them all, there was something in this of the essence of beauty which called out the manliness in their girlish hearts, and made them, as they sat at table beneath their mother's eyes, honor her strange severity, her extreme courtesy, like a queen's raising from the mud a beggar's dirty foot and washing it, when she thus admonished them so severely about that wretched atheist who had chased them, or speaking accurately, been invited to stay with them in the Isle of Skye. Don't sleep with the atheist. He's an asshole. That's not in the book. That's me. There'll be no landing at the Lighthouse tomorrow. That's in the book, said Charles Tansley, clapping his hands together as he stood at the window with her husband. Surely, he had said Surely he had said enough. She wished they would both leave her and James alone and go talking. She looked at him. He was such a miserable specimen. The children said all humps and hollow. He couldn't play cricket. He poked. He shuffled. He was a sarcastic brute, Andrew said. They knew what he liked best, to be forever walking up and down with Mr. Ramsay and saying who had won this, who had won that, who was a first-rate man, athlete and first, who was brilliant, but I think fundamentally unsound. He sounds like me. Who was undoubtedly the ablest fellow in Balliol who had buried his life temporarily at Bristol or Bedford, but was bound to be heard of later when his like Gomena, of which Mr. Tansey had the first pages in proof with him if Mr. Ramsay would like to see them. I think I messed up the name there. It's Mr. Tansley first and Mr. Ramsay second. Okay, sorry. To some branch of mathematics or philosophy saw the light of day. That was what they talked about. She could not help laughing herself sometimes. She said the other day something about waves mountains high. Yes, said Charles Tansley. It was a little rough. Aren't you drenched to the skin? She said. Damp, not wet through, said Mr. Tansley, pinching his sleeve, feeling his socks. Fuck. Okay. But was it? But it was not what that they minded, the children said. It was not his face, it was not his manner, it was him, his point of view. When they talked about something interesting, people, music, story, anything, Eden said it was fine. Evening, so why not sit out of doors? Then what they complained of about Charles Tansley was that until he had turned the whole thing round and made it somehow reflect himself and disparage them, put them all on edge somehow with his acid way of peeling the flesh and blood of everything, he was not satisfied. And he would go to picture galleries, they said, and he would ask one, did one like his tie? God knows, said Rose, one did not. Disappearing as stealthily as tags from dinner table directly the meal was over, the eight sons and daughters of Mr. and Mrs. Ramsay sought their bedrooms, their fastness in a house where there was no other privacy to debate anything, everything. Tansley's tide, the passing of the reform bill, seabirds and butterflies, people while the sun poured into those attics, which a plank alone separated from each other so that every started footstep could be plainly heard, and the Swiss girl sobbing for her father who was dying of cancer in the valley of the Grisons, and little bats, flannel, straw hats, ink pots, paint pots, beetles, and a skull of small birds, while it drew from a long frilled strip of seaweed pinned on the wall a smell of salt and weeds, which was in the towels too gritty with sand from bathing. Strife, divisions, difference of opinion, prejudice, twisted into the very fiber of being. Oh, that they should begin so early, Mrs. Ramsay deplored. They were so critical, her children. They talked such nonsense. She went from the dining room holding James by the hand, since he would not go with the others. It seemed to her such nonsense, inventing difference when people he even those were different enough without that. The real differences she thought standing by the drawing room window are enough, quite enough. She had in mind at the moment rich and poor, high and low, the great and birth receiving from her, half grudging, some respect for had she not in the veins the blood of the very noble, a slightly mythical Italian house whose daughters scattered about English drawing rooms in the 19th century had lips so charmingly had stormed so wildly, and all her wit and her bearing and her temper came from them, and not from the sluggish English or the cold Scotch. But more profoundly she ruminated the other problem of rich and poor, and the things she saw with her own eyes, weekly, daily, here or in London, when she visited the widow or that struggling wife in person with a bag on her arm and a notebook and pencil with which she wrote down in columns carefully, ruled for the purpose wage and spending, employment and unemployment, in the hope that thus she would cease to be a private woman whose charity was half a sop to her own indignation, half a relief to her own curiosity, and become what with her untrained mind she greatly admired an investigator elucidating a social problem. And so the question they were, it seemed to her, standing there holding James by the hand. He had followed her into the drawing room. That young man they laughed at, he was standing by the table, fidgeting with something awkwardly, feeling himself out of things. That doesn't mean the same thing as it did before, right? As she knew without looking round. They all had gone, the children, Minton Doyle and Paul Rayleigh, Augustus Carmichael, her husband, they all had gone. So she turned with a sigh and said, "Would it bore you to come with me, Mr. Tansley?" She had a dull errand in the town. She had a letter or two to write. She would be 10 minutes, perhaps. She would put on her hat, and with her basket and her parasol, there she was again, 10 minutes later, giving out a sense of being ready, of being equipped for a jaunt, which, however, she must interrupt for a moment, as they passed the tennis lawn to us. Mr. Carmichael was basking with his yellow cat's eye ajar, so that, like a cat's, they seemed to reflect the branches moving or the clouds passing, but to give no inkling of any inner thoughts, emotion whatsoever. If you want anything, I have some thoughts, but I'll finish the chapter. For they were making the great exposition, she said, laughing. They were going to the town, stamps, writing, paper, tobacco, she suggested, stepping by his side. But no, he wanted nothing. His hands clasped themselves over his capacious sponge. His eyes blinked as if he would have liked to reply kindly to this blandishment. She was seductive but a little nervous, but could not, sunk as he was in a green somnolence which embraced them all, without needs of words, in a vast and benevolent lethargy of well-wishing all the house, all the world, all the people in it, for he had slipped into his glass at lunch a few drops of something which accounted, the children thought, for the vivid streak of canary yellow and moustache and beard that were otherwise milk white. He wanted nothing, he murmured. "You should have been a great philosopher," said Mrs. Ramsay, as they went down the road to the fishing village, but he had made an unfortunate marriage, holding her black parasol very erect and moving with an indiscernible air of expectation, as if she were going to meet someone round the corner. She told the story, an affair at Oxford with some girl, an early marriage, poverty, going to India, translating a little poetry very beautifully, I believe, being willing to teach the boys Persian or Hindustani. But what really was the use of that, and then lying as they saw him on the lawn? It flattered him, snubbed as he had been. It suited him that Mrs. Ramsay should tell him this. Charles Tansley revived, insinuating too, as he did, the greatness of man's intellect, even in its decay, the subjection of all wife, not that she blamed the girl, and the marriage had been happy enough, she believed, to their husbands' labors. She made him feel pleased with himself that he had done yet, and he would have liked, had they taken a cab, for example, to have paid the fare. As for her little bag, might he not carry that? No, no, she said. She always carried that herself. She did too. Yes, he felt that in her. He felt many things, something in particular that excited. Cars passing by, destroying my poetry. I'm sorry, Virginia. Starting again. Yes, he felt that in her. He felt many things, something in particular that excited him and disturbed him for reasons which he could not give. He would like her to see him, crowned and hooded, walking in a procession, a fellowship, a professorship. He felt capable of anything and saw himself, but what was looking at a man passing Bill, the vast flapping sheet flattened itself out, and each shove of the brush revealed fresh legs, hoops, horse, glistening reds and blue, beautifully smooth, until half the wall was covered with the advertisement of a circus, 100 horsemen, 20 performing seals, lions, tiger. Craning forward, she was short-sighted. She read how it will visit this town. It was terribly dangerous work for a one-armed man, she exclaimed, to stand on top of a ladder like that. His left arm had been cut off in a reaping machine 2 years ago. Let us all go, she cried, moving on, as if all those riders and horses had filled her with childlike exultation and made her forget her pity. Let's go, he said, repeating her words, clicking them out, however, with a self-consciousness that made her wince. Let us go to the circus. No, he would not say it right. He could not feel it right. Why not? She wondered. What was wrong? What was wrong with him then? She liked him warmly at the moment. Had they not been taken, she asked, to circuses when they were children? Never, he answered, as if she asked the very thing he wanted to reply to. Had been longing all these days to say, oh, did they not go to circuses? It was a large family, 9 brothers and sisters, and his father was a working man. My father is a chemist, Mrs. Ramsay. He keeps a shop. He himself had paid his own way since he was 13. Often he went without a greatcoat in winter. He could never return hospitality. Those were his parched, stiff words. At college, he had to make things last twice the time other people did. He smoked the cheapest tobacco, shag, the same the whole man smoked on the quays. He worked hard, 7 hours a day. His subject was not the influence of something upon somebody. They were walking on, and Mrs. Ramsay did not quite catch the meaning, only the words here and there, dissertation, fellowship, readership, lectureship. She could not follow the ugly academic jargon that rattled itself off so glibly. Sorry, I know that word. But said to herself that she saw no why going to the circus had knocked him off his perch, poor little man, and why he came out. It sent me with all that about his father and mother and brothers and sister, and she would see to it that it didn't laugh at him anymore. She would tell Prue about it. What he would have liked it, she supposed, would have been to say how he had been to Ibsen with the Ramsays. He was an awful prig, oh yes, an insufferable bore. For though they had reached the town now and were in the main street, with carts grinding past on the cobble, still he went on talking about the settlement and teaching and working men and helping her on class and lecture till she gathered that he had got back entire self-confidence, had recovered from the circus and was about, and though again she liked him warmly to tell her, but there the houses falling away on both sides. They came out on the quay, and the whole bay spread before, and Mrs. Ramsay could not help exclaiming, "Oh, how beautiful!" For the great plateful of blue water was before her, the hoary lighthouse distant austere in the midst, and on the right, as far as the eye could see, fading and fading in a flow of pleats, the green sand dunes with the wild flowing grasses in them, which always seemed to be running away into some moon country uninhabited of men. That was the view, she said, stopping, growing grayer-eyed that her husband loved. She paused a moment, but no, she said, artists had come here, there. Indeed, only a few paces off stood one of them in Panama hat and a yellow boot, seriously, softly, absorbedly, for all that he was watched by 10 little boys with an air of profound contentment on his round red face, gazing, and then, when he had gazed, dipping, imbuing the tip of his brush in some soft mound of green or pink. Since Mr. Ponceforte had been there 3 years before, all pictures were like that, she said, green and gray, with lemon-colored sailing boats and pink women on the beach. But her grandmother's friends, she said, glancing discreetly as they passed, took the greatest pains. First they mixed their own colors, and then they ground them. And then they put damp cloths on them to keep them moist. So Mr. Tansley supposed that she meant him to see that man's picture was skimpy. Was that what one said? The colors weren't solid. Was that what one said? Under the influence of that extraordinary emotion which had been growing out the walk, had begun in the garden He wanted to take her bag, had increased in the tone when you had wanted to tell her everything about himself. He was coming to see himself, and everything he had ever known got crooked a little. It was awfully strange. Crooked is the word I was searching when I was talking about my poster. Thank you, Virginia. There stood in the parlor of the poky little house where she had taken him, waiting for her while she went upstairs. A moment to see a woman. He heard her quick step above, heard her voice cheerful and low, looked at the mats, tea caddies, glass shades, waited quite impatiently, looked forward eagerly to walk home, determined to carry her bag, then heard her come out, shut at doors, say they must keep the windows open and the doors shut, ask at the house for anything they wanted, she must be talking to a child. When suddenly in she came, stood for a moment silent, as if she had been pretending up there, and for a moment let herself be now, stood quite motionless for a moment against a picture of Queen Victoria wearing the blue ribbon of the garter. And all at once he realized that it was this. She was the most beautiful person he had ever seen. It took us time to understand that. With stars in her eyes and veils in her hair, with cyclamen and wild violet. What nonsense was he thinking? She was 50 at least. She had 8 children, stepping through fields of flower and taking to her breastbud that he had broken and instead had fallen. With the star in her eyes and the wind in her hair, he took her bag. Goodbye, Elsie, she said. And they walked up the street, she holding her parasol, Eric, and walking as if she expected to meet someone round the corner. Well, for the first time in his life, Charles Tansley felt an extraordinary pride. A man digging in drink, stepped digging and looked at her, let his arm fall, and looked at her. Charles Tansley felt an extraordinary pride, felt the wind and the cyclamen and the violets, for he was walking with a beautiful woman for the first time in his life. He had hold of her bag. That's that's part 1. I was thinking of substance while reading it. First off, I chose a difficult book because I'm a fucking idiot, and probably the next book I will do, if I do another one, will be Marcel Proust, because why not? Like, just choose a book with like super lengthy sentences that are impossible to read, even though like, well, I'm not even English, and I'm not even supposed to speak English, so it's hard. So don't judge me. Second thought, I need water. I'm thirsty now. And that's going to be it for the part 1. I must look like a mess. I don't know if it's any interesting or whatever, but it's interesting to read that way, because like you think more about each word. I'm the kind of dumbass that thinks that he needs to read the most in his life, so I read super fast and I miss everything. So something like To Lighthouse, which is already kind of a blurry story, becomes like a big blur when I think back about it. So maybe it'll stay in my mind more if I continue reading it this way. We'll see. I'll try. It'll be fun. Yeah.